Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and today I have the honor to test the FSReborn FSR500, an add-on that is modeled after the Piper PA-46 M500. Now, you will say on the very first look, this looks quite similar to the TBM, and indeed it does, but believe me, the FSR500 is quite a different beast to fly. Today we are going to do the first in a series of 3 videos. On the first one we are going to take it for a first look, check out the flight dynamics, check out how it works in the traffic pattern, and I'll show you a couple of the specialties of this airplane, while on the second video, that's going to release probably a little bit later, we are going to take it IFR, and on the third, I'm going to keep that one a surprise. Alright, let's start by having a very quick look into some of the different options we have available before we're going to head out and do a walk around with it. So, join me in the cabin of our FSR 500, and we can see we've got some very high quality modeling down here. I especially like those little pillows over here, because depending on how you fly, these things can actually fly around in the cabin, and well, we'll get to that later. In any case, we can see very high quality in terms of the modeling and all around the airplane's cabin, which makes it look like a very, very well modeled cabin. And even in virtual reality, this one looks really good, and I feel right there in the airplane. Alright, not gonna break the emergency exit right now, but there is a click spot up here, just saying. Alright, so the first thing we're going to have a look at today is the electronic flight bag, because you've got a whole lot of options on here, and before we start the walk around I want to show you just a couple of them. First of all, you can plan your payload over here, and most importantly you can actually load and unload in real time with all the animations of the fuel trucks and everything outside. So you can see over here I have, just for the sake of it, called passenger SUV, bringing up our guests when we use real-time boarding. Now, from there on we got probably the most interesting thing in here, and that's the maintenance and the realism options, because this is a fully study level airplane. Now, this not only shows in terms of what is available in the EFB, but also the manual, which is worth pointing out before we go into anything else, because the manual actually comes with 144 pages, which goes over most of the airplane very, very nicely, and ultimately contains a lot of very good checklists and everything. So I just want to show you a little thing over here of what the contents of the manual have, and what I want to show you is this. So we're going to start just down here on the normal procedures, and down here we've actually got complete normal checklists, exactly the way you would use them on the real airplane. And for the failures and emergencies, we've got the very same thing down here. We've got not only all the warning explained, which is really nice, and which is wholly lacking in a lot of product manuals for other aircraft these days, but we've actually got complete emergency procedures down here as well. Again, just like we would have them on the real airplane. Now, next to that is our performance tables, which is again something that is lacking in a lot of other developers' products, and those performance tables actually give us some very good data on here as well. Now here we've got the power settings, down here we've actually got the cruise performance tables, and this is something really interesting to look at. So just to show you what this airplane is capable of, at ICAO standard conditions and flight level 300, which is the maximum level for this airplane, you get a true airspeed of 255 knots out of this, which is quite cool. The highest true airspeed at 260 knots, however, is over here at flight level 240. Alright, that much for the manual, and we are obviously going to use those for today's flight. But having the manual in mind, let's quickly go over some of the settings we have for this airplane. So in here we are on the maintenance tab of the electronic flight bag, and you can see over here, for example, we can see all the time that our particular lights have been in use already, and you can see up here that you've actually got to do inspections and replace those lights, otherwise they will eventually fail. Now, I've personally ran into it already. If we look over here into the generator, I've broken that one on my very first attempt, and thereafter I wondered why all the time when I tried to start the airplane, the circuit breaker for the ignition kept popping, which is located up here. That was quite difficult to figure out, but I sincerely like to thank the developers and the chief over at FSReborn for pointing that one out over Discord to me so quickly. So the maintenance page, really good thing to look at, especially over here, your oil quantity. You want to be sure that you've got sufficient oil here for your flights, but also, for example, the tire and the health of which is going to deteriorate based on your landings. The same goes, for example, for the brakes over here, which are going to fade eventually if you do a lot of braking, and that is all modeled, provided you've got it turned on in the realism settings in the electronic flight pack over here. So if you don't want all of that stuff, you can turn it all off, but personally I really like to have it. What's also really nice is the frequently asked question over here, where you find QR codes not only for the aircraft manual and for the checklists and everything, but also you find QR codes for quick video tutorials that the developer has posted on their website. So pretty cool to have all of that stuff in your airplane. On the settings pages over here, you can change stuff like units of measurement. You can preview vehicles, like I am previewing the white passenger SUV over there. And you've got stuff like your SimBrief username and all those goodies. Talking about SimBrief though, that is going to be stuff for the IFR part of things. So things like the flight plan over here, I am going to leave for the next video where we are going to take it IFR. Very quick overview of your airplane on the pre-flight tab over here. You certainly want to have a look at that to see what the current status of your aircraft is. So very cool stuff that they've done over here, and same thing on the cabin comfort, for example, where you can see how your passengers are feeling, where you can control if they actually got their seatbelts on, and where you can possibly even serve some snacks if you want to. Alright, so we still gotta earn our snacks though, so let's put that away and let's head out for the walk around, have a look at the external model before we're going to take this one through its paces in terms of the flight modeling and in terms of what it's capable of doing. So join me on the outside when we are going to head out for a little walk around. We are obviously going to start right at the door where we've got the red carpet down here, by the way. And we are going to start along the trailing edge of the flaps. Have a very quick look down at the landing gear, and do note we still have the chocks in position, which we've got to remove using the electronic flight pack in a couple of moments. Apart from that, some nice level of detailing on the wheels. The gear bay itself is rather empty, but, well, to be honest, how often are you actually going to look into that? So from here we can continue our walk around, and we end up at the aileron. Very quick look down here into the hinges, making sure that everything is looking good, and we've got our static dischargers on it, and then we can move on to our nav lights. Again, very good level of modeling that we find on the lights with the bulbs and everything clearly visible. Same thing up here for the landing lights. So, quick look at the de-icing boot, making sure that there is no damages over there, and when we're walking up here, we have another look beneath the wings, and we can find that we've still got our pitot probe covered, so that one got to be removed through the electronic flight pack as well. And before we forget that, I am actually quickly going to do it now, because that kind of stuff is actually modeled. If you take off with your pitot covers in place, believe me, you are not going to get any airspeed indication in this airplane. So that's really cool. Alright, good. Then we can continue up forward and have a very quick look out here. Quick look at the propeller blades. The engine intakes are clear as well, and a quick look at the forward landing gear and the level of detail that we have in the landing lights up here, which is really good. Okay then, that much for the look up here. Then we can continue on to the other side, and again, same thing over here. Quick look at the pitot probe, the landing gear, and that one up here is our weather radar pod, which is undamaged as well. The same for the de-ice boots, and for the trailing agile plane as well, which leads us to the tailplane. Now, on the tailplane over here, we've basically got a standard Piper tailplane, just like what we would expect from any given Piper aircraft. Alright, so that is the level of detailing that we have on the outside of the FSR500. So let's now head inside and start preparing for our flight. So on the inside, I'm quickly going to stow that EFB, because we really need to check all those circuit breakers up here, as they are all modeled and they do actually pop on their own. So that's what it looks like when one is popped. And yeah, the very first time I loaded this airplane up, I couldn't get it to start, so to be fair, I didn't use the procedure, so that was my mistake. And I immediately broke the starter and the generator, which, well, you can figure the rest of it. Okay, so all the circuit breakers are actually in. And with that, let's get that EFB back in place. And then we can start with the before starting engines checklist. So in this plane, just like any general aviation aircraft, checklists are read and do, so that is exactly what we are gonna do. Passengers boarded, doors, and here we go. So we can either close the door through the electronic flight bag, or we can just do it by clicking up here on the door latch. That's first going to retract the inner part, and then comes the upper part. Finally, make sure that the seals are showing green, otherwise you are going to run straight into pressurization problems. Okay, so straight back up into our seat. I don't think we'll need that thing here anymore, so let's remove the chocks, let's remove the carpet. And when we do that, quick check, parking brake is actually in place. Very good. Alright, then let's just load up the Navigraph en route VFR chart, as that is pretty much what we are going to do today. Right, door closed and latched, all electrical switches off, cabin climate controls are off. Then circuit breakers all in, ECS cabin comfort is off, park and brake on, power lever idle, condition lever cut off. So emergency switch on, and we can observe the PFD starting up, and with that we can turn the emergency switch off again. Okay, nav light on, battery switch on. So flaps, check retracted, the lever certainly is, and it was on the outside as well, and down here we can see flaps are at 0. Okay, fuel gauges and quantity, that's 332 pounds each side, that is absolutely fine. And the rest of our systems are showing green as well. Okay then, we're next up going to do the fire test. Unfortunately that's a little hard to reach, it's that button up here, so things will seem a little small on the PFD, but alright, and that is our engine fire test actually completed. Cool, so let's quickly check what's on the CAS. We've got pitot off, takeoff config, alternator, generator, and feather. That is all alright, and that's the before starting engine checklist complete. Alright, let's continue with the automatic engine start. And don't worry, I'm not about to press Ctrl E, but the checklist is actually called auto engine start using the battery. And that is what we've got in our normal procedures, so that's entirely normal. Okay, cool, so battery voltage between 24 and 26, that's 25.3 over there. Fuel pumps, manual, and down here we've got the left fuel pump on, right fuel pump on. Then ignition switch, manual, and that is ignition on showing over there. Okay then, prop area is clear. Oh, and I should probably just remove that. Taco. Oh, sorry, that car over there. So that was under. I just about had it, but I lost where it is now. Oh, settings. Stop preview. Thanks. So, he's gone. Perfect. Okay, cool. So that's that. Let's continue with the start. Prop area is clear. So, start mode switch is in auto. That's when there is no light illuminated. And then we can go ahead, press that starter. Here we go. NG is increasing at 13%. We're going to add fuel. Here you go, 13%. Mixture into run. Now the engine is starting. If at this point your engine is not doing anything, or if it's just running up for a split second and then popping off again, check your circuit breaker. Your ignition or your starter circuit breaker will be popped. And if that thing keeps popping, then go into the maintenance center and be sure to have your generator checked. Chances are you broke it on an earlier start. That is what happened to me on my first couple of flights. Okay, cool. So the engine has started up. The starter is cut out. Very good. Okay then. Generator switch on. Alternator switch on. Fuel pump switch auto. Ignition switch off. And oil pressure is checked up here. And that's the auto engine start checklist complete. So let's go ahead with the before taxi checklist. Avionics switch on. So MFD is coming on and brought up. And do note that we've got it customized with things like the cabin pressure gauge or the custom flap indicator, landing gear indicator, and so on. So that thing is customized over here. Okay, CAS messages, consider any. That's pitot heat off and takeoff config, because we aren't in takeoff config yet. So that is considered. Okay, autopilot pre-flight test. We aren't going to do that because I don't intend to use the autopilot today. Then let's go ahead with the pitot heat. Switch is on and the warning goes off. Then we can turn it off again. Okay then, taxi light switch can come on. Cabin climate controls, let's go ahead with those. So we want somewhat of a medium-ish temperature. Air conditioning can come on and we're going to keep it at low. That is going to be entirely fine. Okay, so then radios and avionics checked. Well, we are basically not going to use any of that today. Flaps verify retracted, they are. Elevator trim set for takeoff range, that is set down here. Rudder trim set 2 or 3 units of right trim, so that button is located here and that indicator is located here. And this is quite important. The airplane has a very strong torque on takeoff, and for that reason you do want it to be in that green range over here, which is between 2 and 3 units to the right. Okay then, bleed air lever in, cabin pressure dump switch is verified normal, ECS cabin comfort switch set to normal. Then destination elevation, that one is still a little bit of a problem. You should be able to set it over here, however it's currently coupled to the minima. So if I would set the destination elevation now, then it would join up with the minimum over there. That's something which they are still working on, so don't be surprised if that is not exactly working as you'd like it to be yet. Work in progress. Alright, altimeter set, and let's see, the nearest we have in the area is from Emden, I believe, which is Echo Delta Whiskey Echo. So let's get some of that weather. Here we go, QNH 999er. There you go, that's 999er set. And we'll start with a decent altitude to make our air work after the takeoff. Okay, so stall warning test switch. That's located up here. No, up here.
Stall.
Looks good, and with that we're ready for taxi. So taxi, the plane does actually feature a proper beta range, so be prepared to see it moving rather quickly. Okay, brake is released. Taxi light was on anyway. And here we go. As soon as I take it out of the beta range, the thing is taxiing. So brakes are checked. Then having a look at our windsock, it looks like we need a backtrack for a departure towards the south. Once you've accelerated to a good speed, put your propeller into beta mode, or your engine, to avoid it from accelerating too far. As mentioned, the brakes do actually take quite a bit of wear in this airplane, so you don't want to be riding them all the time just because your idle thrust is so high. So for that reason, we are going to use beta range here for the taxi. Once we've accelerated to a good speed, that is. Obviously, avoiding brake usage doesn't mean that you don't use them at all. You do use them when they're needed. So, there's currently no time in place that they're doing some construction work on the taxiway. For that reason, we are going to do the rest over here via backtracking the runway. That's clear on the left side, and... oh, hello dear lady on the right side. But that lady's an airplane, so it's not gonna be our issue. Okay, I need to accelerate again a little bit, so I've just taken the power lever out of the beta range. And that's all we need so that we start accelerating again. So, over here they're doing construction on the taxiway. That exit is blocked over here. And that exit is blocked over here as well. So what we are gonna do is we'll just make a 180. And look at how well you can steer it. This is a full rudder input right now. You can see this thing can really turn on a dime. Alright, here we are. Romeo 16, park and brake is set. Cool, then let's do the engine run-up checklist. Park and brake set, power lever 1900 RPM, and that is not a lot, so have a look at that. I've just given a little bit of power here. Now let's monitor the prop RPMs. You can see it's already more than 1900, so I'm reducing power a little bit once again now. But that looks roughly good over here. That's about 1900, let it be 1 or 2 more or less, doesn't really matter. Okay then, overspeed governor test. Again, that button is located on the top over here, so... here we go. Observe the RPMs dropping down there by 60 RPMs. And that is pretty much exactly 60, so we can release that governor test switch once again. And that's it. Next up we're going to do the reverse lockout, so that thing's got to be on for at least 5 seconds. And now, can go to idle, and when I'm trying to pull it back into the reverse, you can see it doesn't let me do it. It's blocked. Alright. And with that we can release the reverse lockout switch again. Next up, generator switch off. We confirm that the alternator is working, so looking down here, the alternator is taking all of the electrical load now, the generator nothing, and things still work. Okay, now let's turn the generator on again, and you can see generator and alternator are basically sharing the electrical load right now. And that's the engine run-up checklist complete. So let's go ahead with the before takeoff checklist. Seats, armrest, belts adjusted and locked, generator switch on, alternator switch on, bleed air lever, that's the one down here, is in. ECS cabin comfort set to norm. Fuel temperature within limits, fuel pump switch. For the takeoff we switch in manual. Ignition, manual, pitot heat, on. Ice protection is not required and off. We're going to use the pulse lights, landing lights on, strobe lights on, and nav light on. Flight instruments are checked, and I'm going to match the heading over here. And with that, we are basically ready for departure. So the plane can take off with the flaps in 0, 10 and 20. As we've got a rather short runway over here, I'm going to use flaps in 10 degrees for our takeoff, which we've got extended right now. Okay, last thing then is going to be the flight control check. So let's go ahead with that. Oopsie. Here we go. That's what I wanted to do. Alright, very good. And with that, the B4 takeoff checklist is complete. So for the normal takeoff, we are going to apply the brakes, set the power all the way to takeoff thrust, then release brakes, monitor the engine instruments, check 60 knots, rotate at 85, and optical clearance speed is 100 knots. And once that is attained, we can raise the landing gear, put the yaw damper on, and use the autopilot as required. We are not going to use the autopilot today. At least not for a longer moment in time. Alright, so that is basically it. So having a look down here on the chart, we've got both a left and a right traffic pattern. There is no altitude published for that. So we can choose anything we want, and we are immediately going to climb out of the pattern, make sure that we don't overfly the city down here. Alright, so with that, we are pretty much ready to go. So I'd say, let's go ahead, set power, and we are going to take off. So, transponder on, and timer start. Okay, setting power. The plane does not have a torque limiter, by the way. If I'm pushing it all the way up, this happens. So don't break your engine when you're setting takeoff power. But this is pretty much looking good. Okay, brakes off, here we go. And you can see how it immediately starts turning to the right due to that torque. But we've also got some 10 knots of crosswind coming from the right. Okay, 60 knots. 85, rotate. So, slowly releasing the rudder. Here we go. Positive rate of climb. Tap the brakes. And gear lever coming up. That's hidden beneath the yoke down there. Okay, yaw damper on, and then we can start our left-hand turn. But do note, even with the yaw damper on, we still need a little bit of rudder input there. Alright, this looks good. So, we're clear of everything, speed is good, flaps up. Staying clear of those wind turbines down there. Alright, let's gain a little bit of altitude before we are going to overfly the coastline, because coastlines are traditionally where the birds are, and we want to be sure that we are absolutely above that. So, my impression of the takeoff? Well, we've had quite a crosswind from the right. It was forecast to be 10 knots. Looking down at the instrument, if you look at it in the review, it was probably something like 16 knots direct crosswind, and 20 is the limit for the plane, so we were rather close to the crosswind limit. But you could see how it immediately started to veer out to the right due to that wind, but it was easily correctable, and the plane did a very good job. The rudder was very effective for countering that. Okay then, let's go ahead and continue with the after takeoff or the max continuous power climb checklist. So power lever set MCT. We're going to set that a little bit higher. We're looking at like 1300 on the torque. Like that. So, fuel pump, auto, ignition, auto, landing lights, off, taxi and recognition lights are going to go off, ice protection is not required, and that's basically it. So, best rate of climb speed, 125 knots, that's what we are flying, and for now just climbing up to a little higher altitude so that we can do a couple of exercises in the air then. Okay, cool. So, First check over here. With increasing altitude, our torque is decreasing, so that thing is modeled correctly. So let's add a little bit more power once again. Keep it at 1300 roughly. Like that. So the limits we gotta observe is maximum torque of 1313, maximum ITT 770, and maximum NG 101.7%. That's the three limits we gotta observe up here. Those and that one. Alright. Apart from that, no autopilot engaged, all manual flight, and you can see it's going really nicely. But you can also see that we still got that rudder trim in, which we do absolutely need for that climb. So let me just about get that rudder trim out. I'm going to remove that, return that to 0, and then see what the plane is doing. You can see, slowly banking, and we can see that from the outside as well. Like, our plane is slowly turning to the left, so be careful when you're flying this that you've actually got your trim in. Again, looking at between 2 and 3 units, something like 2.7 normally works pretty well. Okay, we're going to level off at flight level 95, which is the highest VFR level we can take. And here we are, 9.5. Quickly going to match that altitude bug. So I'll just let the power be where it is right now. Let's see at how fast the plane is going to accelerate. Nope, we are going to stay with the VFR map for this one. And more looking outside, less looking inside. We are flying VFR after all. But you can quickly see where that speed indicator is going over there. So, at 190 we should start getting speed warnings. Here they are, okay, so let's pull some of that power off. And over here you can see it's actually got some protections that are going to help us when we exceed airplane limits. And those protections we want to explore now. So I am going to add the power one more time, and then you are going to see what's going to happen. So the power is in, I'm not touching the yoke, look at what's going to happen once we're above 190. And once the autopilot is disconnected, because that does come on automatically there. Okay, adding a bit more power, we are just about in the range where nothing happens. So I'll just push it down a little bit, and then we'll see the protection come active before we overspeed it. Here you see, ESP active, the plane is pitching up, and by that it's protecting itself from the overspeed. However, if you really want to, you can still push it into it. So now that we've taken out a little bit of that power for the cruise flight, let's also remove some of that trim until we are in trim again down here. So looking at about 1 to the right at the moment, totally fine. Yep, gonna take power out a little bit more aggressively now. Reduced to something about 160 knots or so. And then we can start doing a couple of turns. I'm going to synchronize that heading bug over here. Let's start with a little bit of air work going left and right. By the way, you will notice the autopilot is going to come on when the plane runs into its protections. Alright, so 160 knots, let's start with a left-hand turn. And on this one, it's just the yaw damper, but not any manual rudder input. You can see that basically it does not really provide sufficient rudder input as we're turning, but I wouldn't really expect any general aviation autopilot to do that in the real world as well. So you do have to use a little bit of manual rudder input in the air in order to keep your airplane in synchronized flight. Now, that is something, by the way, that I'm a little bit unhappy with in all of Microsoft Flight Simulator, but let's see how well the rudder and the aileron are coordinated in this airplane using the CFD flight model. So let's show you, well, yeah, you can somewhat see my pedals down there. So have a look over here on the turn coordinator and have a look down there at the pedal and my inputs. So you see a little bit of left input, and then you can actually keep it. Okay, the same to the other side. Look at that. You can see I do need a little bit of rudder input there, and once we are completely in the turn, the auto-impeller can take that over and can keep it synchronized. But we do need it when we do an aileron input, then we do need some rudder input in this airplane as well, as you can basically see over here. Alright, so anyone can fly a standard 30-degree bank turn, so how about we take it to a 45 degree in order to do some steep turns while maintaining 9,500 feet. So let's roll wings level one more time at a track of, let's see what that is. Let's make it 330. Like so. Okay, heading back is synchronized. We're going to start with a steep turn to the left. And you will notice that as soon as we are reaching 45 degrees angle of bank, we are once again going to activate a protection that is going to roll us wings level again. So let's try that. And here I can feel it. I need to actively counter steer that protection right now in order to keep the bank where it is. And if I simply let go of the controls, this is what happens. You can see the autopilot comes on and it's rolling us wings level. Here we go. Okay, let's turn that autopilot off again. And just to show you the difference between what happens when the protection is active and what happens without the protection is active, this time I'm just going to give you 30 degrees of bank to the left, and I'll simply let go of the controls. So this is zero aileron input now. This is only a little bit of elevator in order to prevent us from descending too quickly. You can see it's almost maintaining the bank angle. Now let me increase it again to 45 to activate the protection. You can see immediately, even with my left displacement of the yoke, this is standard, this is left. Even with that, the protection, now that I let go of the yoke, immediately activates the autopilot. That is going to roll us wings level again, protecting us from exceeding severe angles of bank. So that's a pretty cool thing there. Now let's see what other protections we got and what other airplane behavior we got. Once again, autopilot off, flight director off, and thrust idle. That activates the gear warning, which is going to eventually play repetitive, but here you got it again. What we're going to do now, by pressing the alert button, we can cancel that landing gear warning, provided that the flaps are at a setting of 10 degrees or less. So right now the flaps are up, so that works. Next up, we're going to slow it down, and we are going to take it down to a little approach to stall exercise, and we're going to see how the airplane is going to take that. Let's maintain 9,500 up here. So, something to notice, the speed is decreasing very, very slowly. And I did inquire the developer about that, and apparently it is accurate to the real airplane, as some of their beta testers flying the actual plane have confirmed. So, speed is coming down. You can see the ignition came on automatically now. That's still in auto mode. So let's keep that nose up high. Let's try and maintain that altitude. Giving it a little bit of back trim, but now I'm going to leave it with a trim. So, check what's going to happen as soon as we reach the stall area. Stall warning. And protection active, aggressively pushing that nose down in order to prevent the airplane from stalling. Okay, so let's try that one more time, and this time we're actually going to force it into the aerodynamic buffet. So autopilot is off. So I will need to have to pull aggressively to override that protection. There we go. Okay, and that's all I can do. Now the nose is coming down, nothing I can do. That's full aft elevator. Okay, letting go of the elevator. And that thing is quite aggressive there. Okay. So that's the approach to stall with the flaps and landing gear retracted. Let's do the same thing with the thing extended. And at the same time, let's just turn a little bit further to the right and start slowly making our way back to our airfield. Yes, the gear is checked, thank you. Okay, so flaps 10. So, when we are going to extend the flaps into the 20 position, with the landing gear still up, we will no longer, or we should no longer, be able to silence the warning. Let's see if that works. So let's just have it. You can see it's still there. Now I'm pressing the alert button, which normally should cancel the warning. You can see we can no longer cancel it. Okay, landing gear down. Flaps full. Let's roll wings level for the exercise. Now, in the manual, the developer said that the stall speed with the gear and flaps extended is a little bit lower than what is shown on the speed indicator. That's apparently a limitation of the CFD flight model in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Okay, here comes the stall warning. So just using a little bit of right rudder in order to keep wings level. Ooh, here we go. Okay then. Recover. And that is looking good. Alright, cool. So, gear up, flaps up. And then we can add some power again. And this is basically it. So let's go ahead and search ourselves a little airfield where we can do a couple of touch and goes. And on the left side there we've got Wangerooge Airport on the German island of Wangerooge. And over there we're going to do a couple of touch and goes before we are eventually going to return to Norddeich Airport. So, look at that. I'm going thrust idle. Cancel that gear warning. And look at that. 2,400 feet a minute with a speed constant at 160. We shouldn't exceed 175 on our descents. So what is actually recommended in the product manual is that in the descents we're going to use level change with a maximum of 175 knots selected and then set the power accordingly as we need it. What you're also going to notice, now with the power and idle, the plane is once again out of trim, so we need to apply a little bit of rudder trim once again. And this time we're simply going to neutralize it, and you will see the airplane is actually back in trim again. Alright, so that's the reason why that rudder trim switch is right up there on the main panel for you guys. With an airplane that's got such a strong engine and propeller as this one, you absolutely do need it. Cool, so let's have a very quick look into the chart then. You can see we've got a runway leading up over there, and it's a left-hand pattern at an altitude of 600 feet. And that is exactly what we are gonna do. So we'll overfly the field, and we'll join the traffic pattern somehow like this on the downwind then. Okay, adding a bit of power. Initially we're going to maintain 2,000 feet so that we stay well clear of all the airport traffic when we overfly the field. Like so. Now look at that. Torque at 730 and our speed is approaching 180 knots. You can see this is a really strong engine we've got in this plane. Okay, 2,000, going to maintain that. And then we're going to fly ourselves down into the traffic pattern. Down there at Wangerooge. Field is in sight. Down over there. Single runway next to that little dike. And some parking area over there. So we're probably going straight above the base right now. Obviously not meant to do that in real life, but for that reason I'm maintaining an altitude more than 1,000 feet higher than the published pattern altitude of 600. Okay. Quick check on the wind. 270 at 28 knots down there. So that's going to turn a little bit to the left and going to decrease a little bit on the ground. Normally we say it's going to turn... Well, it's going to decrease by like 15 knots and make a left turn in the descent on the northern part of the Earth. But let's see how that's going to happen. Alright, so... Thrust in idle, down to pattern altitude, 600. Like that. And this looks good. Okay, let's start the right-hand turn to bring ourselves into the downwind. Also, I'm going to extend the flaps to the 10 position already and pre-select the rudder trim to, again, 2.5, 3 units. Because that is going to aid us greatly in the touch and go that we are going to perform. Okay, speed coming back nicely. There's typically a lot of microlight traffic flying in this area, so I really want that speed below 120. I'm even going to take it down further as we actually enter the downwind area. Alright, that's where the field is, hidden beyond the dike. Not all that easy to see, but we are looking good at the moment. So, fuel pump on, ignition on, and absolutely a landing light and the pulse lights. Yaw damper off. Okay, we're at pattern altitude, landing gear down. Okay, the wind is now 220 at 20 knots. So that's gonna be, well, something like 15 knots of crosswind. 20 is the limit. Actually, 16 is the limit. 20 is what I have flown on my last flight with this. That way around. Okay, downwind. There's our runway. Flaps 20. Let's get that speed back. And turn into base. Flaps 36. 85 knots approach speed. Down there is our runway. Let's initiate the descent. Okay, landing checklist. Gear down, flaps full, fuel pump on. Landing checklist complete. And the wind is now 225 at 21. So pretty close to the crosswind limit. And you can see how much a crab angle to the left we actually have here. Okay, power idle. Decrabbing. Flaps 10, set power. '85, rotate. Okay, positive climb, neutralize the rudder, tap the brakes, landing gear up. So, that was alright, but I want to do that one more time. Maximum crosswind, guys. Okay. Turning upwind, maintaining altitude. I'm gonna leave the flaps out at 10, that is going to help keep the speed under control a little bit. Yes, the gear is checked. That's on purpose, my friend. So at this speed, we can turn into the downwind straight away. We're covering all the distance that we're supposed to have to the of the upwind leg anyway. You can see it down here on the chart. Just about turning straight onto the published downwind here. Okay, heading east. And down there is our runway. Might actually make it a heading of 100. We can see down here that we've got a wind correction angle of almost 20 degrees. 10, sorry. Okay, gear down. Then flaps 20. Okay, turning base. Flaps 36. Maintain that speed, 85. Looking good. Very easy to control those parameters in this airplane. It's a very responsive engine as well, so maintaining a speed is actually something that's pretty easily doable. Alright, this time we want to touch down a little bit earlier than last time. Because last time we flared quite a bit. This time we want to be down quite a bit earlier. Okay, here we are. Gotta correct a little bit more for that wind. Okay, back on the extended center line. Okay, power idle. Let's come in a bit lower. And decrabbing, let's put it down on that runway. You can see how easy it is to maintain that center line like this. But you've really got to keep careful control of the rudder when you are taking that, when you are re-adding the power. Here we go. 90, rotate. Positive climb, tap the brakes, gear up. And taking that crab angle out again. So, let's fly back towards Northern Norddeutsch. I think we have very well demonstrated the crosswind capabilities of the M500. So, yaw damper on. And for this one we're going to climb 2,500 feet. That should keep us well clear of the birds below. And just turning us a tiny bit to the left here in order to stay clear of the island. Okay, very good. So, fuel pump auto, ignition auto, and we can turn those lights off again. Pretty much like this. Okay, flaps up. Could have retracted those a bit earlier, but that's fine as well. So 140 knots is the recommended en route climb speed. Just to show you what kind of rate of climb you get with that. You can see we're looking at roughly 2,000 feet a minute that we're getting out of the plane. And that is with my power a little bit lower than what's published for max continuous. But overall, this works pretty well for me. Okay, cool, here we are. So, accelerating again, that means we can take some of that rudder trim out. Maintaining 2,500 and following the German coastline across the East Frisian Islands down here. Reaching 180 knots, that's about what we should be looking at, so let's reduce power a little bit. Let's start with 1,000 on the torque, see what we're getting with that. Still accelerating, so let's do a bit less. 900 maybe. Okay, looking good like this. So on the left side we got Halle Airport down here, which is a really nice one to approach as well. Unfortunately there is no pairway rendition out for it, but there is for Northern Norddijk, which is where we are going to right now. Okay, so with the cruise power setting we can clear all that rudder trim like that, and then we're good to go. Let's reduce my power a little bit more. You can see how easily the plane wants to go into the overspeed there, and we are really not using that much power. You can see where the lever is right now. There's quite a bit of room upstairs there. Alright, this is looking good now. So, you will have noticed that the airplane climbs, performs really nicely, but there is one little issue with how it handles. At least, I don't really want to call it an issue, because technically it isn't. However, it is something that I come across when I'm flying this. It is correct behavior for the plane, but I suppose as an A330 pilot I should be used to aircraft that don't decelerate very well, but when I see it in the simulator, it's still something that catches me all the time. Now, when we decelerate with the PA-46 or with the FSR500, when we decelerate it, you will notice that you don't really get a lot of deceleration out of the plane, especially when you are still in a descent or when you're trying to avoid that landing gear warning coming up. Now, especially avoiding that landing gear warning, you can't reduce the torque below 300, and you can see that even with 756 right now, we're getting 180 knots out of the plane. So 300 is the setting below which the landing gear warning is going to come up, but I inquired about it with the developer as well, and it's even in the product manual, to be entirely fair. When something like that happens, you just gotta cancel it by clicking that alert button up here, and that is going to cancel that landing gear warning horn. And you really need to get rid of that in order to have a halfway decent descent. But as you saw when we came down from 7,500 after our stall exercises, even with the thrust and idle, you're still not decelerating and descending very well. So planning ahead is quite important when you are flying this one. Alright, so that is our look at the VFR performance of the FSR500. On the next video we are going to have a look at the IFR performance of the plane for a little IFR sector. But that's gonna be a topic for a separate video, because it would really bust the length of this one. Okay, so as you can see right now, we've got the automatics all off. The only thing that's on over here is the yaw damper. And you can see I'm not even touching the controls. The air is really smooth right now. It's a constant headwind, but it's constant. There is hardly any changes happening. And with that, you can see flies really nicely. Barely any inputs you need to do. So, obviously, thinking about it in the aftermath, I should probably have flown into the other direction at first, because now we're traveling against a 29 knot headwind. But as you can see, even down here at 2,000 feet, flying 180 knots, that's 190 true airspeed. So it's not as fast as a TBM, but it is especially as enjoyable as a TBM. And it is a really well-modeled aircraft. Let's have a very quick look into some of the en route features that come with this airplane by looking into the electronic flight bag. So, cabin comfort. That's something that you want to have a look at. Now, as you can see, passengers very hungry, very thirsty, and getting hot. Okay, I take it we are going to reduce those temperatures a little bit. But now the most important question of all. Are the pillows still in place? No. I suppose after the steep turns and the stalls we did, yeah, they flew all over the cabin. Okay, I can live with that. I can live with it. Based on what we did right now, that is okay. And I can absolutely understand why that passenger seems a little bit unhappy as well. But let's see if we can do something about it. Maybe give him a coffee or give him a snack. See what's gonna happen. So, here you go, my friend. Enjoy that one. I have to see that from the back. I just have to see it from here. Yep, that is certainly alright. Even though I have to this date still find the coffee machine in this airplane. I suppose that's something that I'm not even gonna ask about. Well, nice little gimmick that we've got up here, and... what's that? That looks nice. Is that some form of a macaron over here? Well, certainly that croissant looks nice as well. Alright though. Let's get rid of that stuff. And then we can start our approach preparation. We're gonna go over here into Echo Delta Whiskey Sierra, Northern Norddeich Airport. And looking down at the VFR chart once again. Patterns are published on both sides, east and west. And we're just gonna do straight in. So we're gonna fly straight across the North Sea, and then we're gonna turn straight in down here for a landing on runway 16. So as I told you, we need to think a little bit about our energy management on the descents, and that applies VFR just like it does IFR. So a little bit of mathematics here. 2,500 feet, and we've got to descend. 1,000 foot means 3 nautical miles, so we have like 7.5 miles for our descent, which means if we wanted to hit the water on the extended center line, we could start our descent right now. Now, then we've got our pattern altitude that we'll just ignore for now, but we remember we need about 7.5 miles for the descent, plus we still need to lose our airspeed. However, that headwind of 30 knots is definitely going to help us with it, so for that reason I'm just delaying the descent a little bit over here. But let's see if we can already make out the field. I do believe it should be somewhere over there. Yeah, over here I believe. Either that or that should be our airport. Okay then, let's reduce power. So let me just show you what I meant earlier on. I'm going to reduce the torque to 300, which is just before the landing gear warning horn comes on. And this is all that you can do in the descent. This is really all you can do. About 1,000 feet a minute. However, luckily for us, what we can always do, looking at this, 168 knots for flaps 10, and our landing gear extension speed is 168 knots. So, if we go just below 168, then we can get the landing gear and the flaps out, which is definitely going to help. Or, we can just do this, go down to idle thrust, and it is going to help a little bit, though not all too much. Alright then, let's try to find the field. I think it's over there. I think it's that one. That does look like an airport to me. Alright, so here it is. Flaps 10, gear down. Let me show you the kind of drag that your airplane can develop with that. You can see now the speed is actually coming back nicely. And now we can actually descend and decelerate at the same time as well. So if you really get aggressive on it, then you can absolutely turn this airplane into a descender as well. Okay, for the landing, fuel pump on, ignition on, lights on, and pulse lights on. Okay, there is our runway. So 106 knots, 1,000 feet a minute, stable with this. Let's maintain the 600. We don't want to go too low, and we might even need a little bit of power in order to maintain that airspeed. Wind is coming from the right, 17 knots. So it looks like we're gonna have another crosswind landing here. Okay then, flaps 20. Flaps 36, landing checklist, gear down, flaps 36, fuel pump on, landing checklist complete. 85 knots. $90 is a little bit fast right now. So the last thing I want to demonstrate to you is stopping performance. So once we touch down, I'm gonna go full brakes and maximum reverse. Okay, you can see the yaw damper comes off automatically if we forget about it. That's good. And here we go. Left rudder. That was a bit too much. Here we go. Okay. So that's maximum braking effort right now. Alright, let's get... And here we are. So that is the FSR500. Let's stop that timer. 39 minutes added to my counter on the watch. And then we're going to vacate to the left and we'll park straight in front of the terminal. Once we're parked, I'm going to give my first opinion on how the airplane handles and on my first impression taking it out for a little ride VFR. Okay, we're clear of that runway. Let's quickly stop over here, set the park brake, and then we can run the after landing items. So timer is stopped, fuel pump, auto, ignition, off, pitot heat, off. So, ice protection equipment off, landing and taxi lights as needed, strobe lights off, weather radar standby, flaps up, and transponder on standby. Cool, after landing checklist complete, then let's taxi to the stand. Brakes off, you can see we start accelerating straight away. So let's put it back in a beta range. It's modeled quite nicely. To get it into beta range, all that I need to do is I am holding my F2 key to reduce the thrust until I hear a little click. When I hear that click, that's basically where the neutral thrust setting is. So very well done by FSReborn. Okay, we're gonna stop over here. Parking brake set, and then we can commence our shutdown. Parking brake set, ECS comfort switch off. That power lever. Idle, cabin climate controls. They're all off. Okay, fuel pump switch off, avionics off, generator off, alternator off, ITT stabilize for 2 minutes at idle. That's what we have done already. Okay, so then we want to be sure that we get the feather message. Alright, we're just getting beta right now, but I suppose we're gonna get feather once we actually shut it down. Okay, so, condition lever cut off. Oop, typical simulator lag when an engine is turned off. We don't need that timer anymore. And let's see what we're gonna get once the engine is shutting down. Here we go, feather is displayed. Very good, then let's continue. Bleed air off. Exterior light switches off. So, fuel remaining is alright. 223, so we just used 200 pounds of fuel for this one. Okay, cool. So, battery off. And with that, the shutdown checklist is complete. What I am gonna do is I'm gonna tie it up and put the wheel chocks in place. So let's go down to the ground ups menu, pitot covers, and the chocks. And we can put some propeller covers as well, I suppose. and obviously the red carpet for all you guys who might be new to the channel. So if you are, and if you're interested in more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. Alright then. I suppose we gotta tidy that mess up over here before we open up that door for anybody, so let's just go down here, and on the cabin comfort, I believe. Yeah, over here we can organize the pillows and put them back in a place where they're actually supposed to be. Alright, cool. And here we are, that's the first flight VFR in the FSReborn FSR500, which technically speaking is a Piper 48 M500. Alright, so how did I like it? Well, to be honest, I absolutely loved it. And the reasons for that are as follows. First of all, we've got a very good looking plane in terms of the modeling and in terms of the cabin. We've got a very feature-rich electronic flight bag over here, which has a lot of options in it, and it has even more than what I've shown you today, which you are going to see once we start flying IFR with this one on the next video. Now, for this one, very nice modeling. The flight dynamics, they do feel believable, even though I've never actually flown a PA-46, but overall, they do seem quite believable. Now, handling of the airplane is nice in all flight conditions, and those protections that we've seen in action are actually pretty cool as well. And to my knowledge are actually the only ones at the moment in an airplane category like this in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, crosswind handling, as you could see today, works pretty well with this. It is a very stable airplane when you hit that rudder. And like that, it's really easy to land that plane, even in maximum crosswind conditions as we had for pretty much all landings today. So overall, I can really recommend this airplane. It comes at not a too high price point, something like 32 or 33 euros on the marketplace, and it is sold exclusively on marketplace. So that's your place to head over to get the FSReborn FSR500, aka Piper 48 Malibu M500. Alright then, I see you all on the next one, which is going to be an IFR flight with this. And in the meantime, if you like the video, don't forget to like it in YouTube as well, as it does help with the algorithms. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in the upcoming videos. Also, I've got another surprise planned with this little airplane over here, which I'm sure many of you are actually going to appreciate, but more on that a little bit later in the week. For now, that's it. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and if you really liked my videos, then I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link that you can find in the video description below. Thank you for watching, and then see you all again on the next one.